channel, sports fans. Okay, let's get into this one right here. The LeBron James NBA narrative. And I'm going to talk about this real quick because, I hear a lot of channels, and I'm not going to really, put no names out there, but we really have to stop this LeBron James narrative and how he's controlling the NBA. And, I know he's controlling the storyline of the NBA, but come on, man. The NBA is a company, it's a corporation, it does business and all these things. So let's realize that LeBron James does not control the NBA, and he does not control the NBA narrative, the storylines, and all that. Right? It's the NBA that controls its own destiny, its own narrative, its own storylines. And this is what the NBA wants. The NBA cannot bring you no on-court greatness. They do not have those type of players no more. And that's just the way it is. And when I say that, I mean that back in the day, the soap opera was based on the on-court greatness. That's what the soap opera was. You got to have some type of storyline, some type of soap opera in your sports league, or it's not going to sell. It's not going to be exciting. The reason why they brought, black players into the NBA at one point, they brought black players into the MLB at one point because they could have a better storyline, a better narrative, a better soap opera. And that's not trying to be racial. That's just the way it is. They made these guys abolish, these black players abolish their sports leagues and bring them into, these bigger sports leagues and stuff like that. That's a whole different story. And, it shouldn't have been like that in the first place, but that's just the way we dealt with segregation back in the day. And, I have my own opinion about the whole thing in history in general, but we'll just leave that alone. But you got to have a soap opera to sell your league, to make it, exciting, to sell tickets, to sell, merch, to sell whatever you want to sell. You got to have a storyline. No matter if it's with black players, white players, whatever. But we saw how MLB is now. We saw how, has gotten to be. We saw, they put out all the black players. Now you don't have any soap opera. Hockey is whatever it is. There's no soap opera in it. I'm just saying, the black players really sell the soap opera more than any other race. When we talk about on-court greatness, selling the NBA back in the day and creating the soap opera based on the on-court greatness, when you look at MLB, right, the Spanish players are great. They're great players, and they've always been great players. But if you can't sell some kind of soap opera, you're nobody cares about your league, right? They can't speak English, they can't sell Nikes, they can't sell on McDonald's commercials, whatever. They're not going to get in trouble because they're here for a better life. And that's what the, American players, especially the black players, have always sold, this type of soap opera. We saw, I'll give you the lowdown on baseball. Baseball was my number one sport. I was a natural in baseball. So I grew up on these players, Ken Griffey Jr. and Doc Gooden and David Justice and Sammy Sosa and, Kirby Puckett and Barry Bonds, Bobby Bonilla, Joe Carter, Dave Winfield. I'm just saying the black players. We can say some other, Mark Grace, Mark Sandberg, or Ryan Sandberg, whatever, even Spanish players. But when it came to the drama, in baseball, the black players, for better or worse, always sold the soap opera. You had Deion Sanders, great two-sport player, played football, played baseball. It was great because, this was something that a lot of players couldn't do, play in two different professional leagues. And you had Bo Jackson and Deion Sanders. They would play two sports in one day. This was on-court greatness, folks. And then you had, a different soap opera. With Darryl Strawberry and Doc Gooden getting caught in a hotel with hookers and cocaine and stuff like that. And then you had Kirby Puckett spitting at reporters, being defiant, even though he wasn't a guy like that. He had his little mood or whatever like that. But what I'm trying to say is, you need some type of soap opera. Back in the day with the black players in baseball, you had the soap opera, Ricky Henderson being one of the greatest outfielders and base stealers of all time, and, things like that. And then they decided they want to make all the money, so they put all the black players out, American players out, so they can pay these Caribbean players bullish money in the AAA farm leagues, $50,000, $75,000, because in the farm teams in America, you got to pay American players $1 million, $2 million before they come up and before they actually ready for the major leagues. So because of that, kicking all the black players out, your soap opera just disappeared in the MLB, and it went to trash. Now, when we kind of about face, and we go back to the NBA. They didn't do the same thing as the MLB and put all the black players out, even though most of your black players today are international players. Which, whatever, we were told that these international players are in the game because they're more fundamentally sound than American players. But, you know, we're in 2025 now, and we don't found out that's one of the biggest lies because they travel, they carry, they only play at one level of basketball, which it's hard to call it basketball anymore, but all they do is pick and pop and shoot the three. It's a positionless game. You know, your best center in the league, he has no competition. They're always hurt. They always make up excuses. They don't play defense. They're not competitive. So that's all I'm saying with these international players. They're not they're not what we've been told as far as, you know, the greatest fundamentally sound of all time. Maybe they might be great fundamentally sound in their own country, but now they done come to the United States. And, you know, the United States done lifted the NBA done lifted all the rules of past eras and giving these guys basically no rules, whether they're international players or American players. Just a little story. But in this NBA today, you know, I hear a lot of, you know, sports channels speaking about, you know, LeBron James and how he's controlling the narrative, how he's controlling the NBA, and even if he retires, he's still going to be having a hand in what's going on in the NBA. And I mean, when we deal with reality as adults, we really got to grow up, because I listen to some of these people and they seem to be intelligent. They seem to know about the NBA. They seem to know about sports, but they seem not to know about reality in this soap opera that the NBA is bringing you. And like I said, I'm okay with a soap opera because that makes things exciting. That gives you a storyline. But, you know, when I was growing up, the soap opera was because of the on-court greatness, because of the rivalries, because of the competitive nature of the players, because players had certain names that had to do with their game. Magic Johnson, Air Jordan, you know, Mount Mutombo, you know, these different names had to do with their game. These days, these players just have names that have nothing to do with their game. Absolutely nothing. The Greek Freak. And I'm not trying to knock these players. I'm just saying, the Joker, what does that have to do with your game? Ant-Man, what does that have to do with your game? Has nothing to do with your game. And again, when we talk about LeBron James, he does not control the narrative. He doesn't control the NBA. He doesn't control nothing like this. It's the NBA that controls everything. People aren't pointing out the owners. They're not saying nothing. You know, we do got one dummy commissioner, Adam Silver, that gets the finger pointed at him instead of us pointing the finger at Adam Silver and us pointing the fingers at the owners, because the owners have a big say so in how the game's going to be played, how the game's going to be sold, how the game is going to be, how the rules are going to be put out there or not put out there. Everything. The owners have say so in it. It's the owner's team. And every team and every owner is part of making money off the league. So these owners, not only the commissioner, these owners are part of the soap opera that is being sold with the NBA. And the soap opera that these owners and the commissioner has wanted for a long time. And we can say all the way back, let's just say 2012 when 2010, 11 when LeBron James went to the Miami Heat. Where was the pushback? Because we all know Kobe Bryant tried to get Chris Paul and they all went against Kobe Bryant. So where was the pushback that LeBron James, we can't stop him from going to Miami. That's his opinion. That's what he wants to do. He was a free agent. Okay. Well, that's a trade that Kobe Bryant and Chris Paul was trying to do, to team up and play together. And they went, the owners and whatever, they went against, and the commissioner went against Kobe Bryant. So there is say so. So where was the pushback from the owners and the commissioner for LeBron James when he went to Miami? Now, he can go to Miami, like I said, but he had to bring Chris Bosh with him. They could have said, no, this is a super team of guys in their prime. We're not down with that. Because the same thing that's legal right there with LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh was the same thing that was legal with Kobe Bryant and Chris Paul. So, but there was no pushback from the commissioner. There was no pushback from ESPN and the rest of these owners. So basically, that's what they wanted. They wanted this type of soap opera to sell their league and boost their league up for ratings, for better or for worse. You got to remember, whatever LeBron James does, because it's promoted by ESPN, promoted by Fox, and they're outlets, let's don't forget, you got a lot of people working for the NBA, ESPN, Fox, and Disney who are outlets, whether it's YouTube channels, whether it's newspapers, online newspapers, whatever. They all work for the ESPN, the NBA, Fox Sports, and stuff like that. So this is the soap opera they have been wanting to have, for better or worse. It didn't matter if LeBron James wins or if he loses. This is the name they wanted at the forefront of their NBA. And this is what they have gotten since the Miami deal. It don't matter if he wins or if he loses. Who cares about on-court greatness? Who cares about rivalries? Which, if LeBron James would have never went to Miami, now you got rivalries with Dwayne Wade against LeBron James, Chris Bosh against LeBron James. Who's this guy? I forget his name. That played for the Bulls, that won the MVP one year. A rivalry. And you would have fair, competitive rivalries in that East against LeBron James. But guess what? The NBA didn't want that. The owners didn't want that. The commissioners didn't want that. The commissioner didn't want that, or it would have been pushback. Actually, it was celebrated. It was put on the decision. Again, LeBron James can do whatever he wants to do. But Kobe Bryant couldn't do what he wanted to do because the commissioner and the owners were against it. So he goes back to Cleveland, and it was celebrated again. It wasn't called a decision. It was called "I'm coming home," and he had a big old thing like that. And I think it was in the whatever arena they call that now in Cleveland. And he said he's doing this for Cleveland. And yes, he didn't have Kevin Love, and yes, he didn't have Kyrie there. I didn't see him. I didn't see the whole thing. I just seen when he was on stage and he sounded like he was drunk. And said he didn't care what nobody else said about, his decision, so, per se, and other people having input in what he needs to do with his career. Instead, he's doing it for Cleveland, and everybody stood up and clapped for him. And it was basically another decision. And again, the owners weren't against that. Adam Silver wasn't against that. And again, he wasn't going to play only with Kyrie. He handpicked Kevin Love again and again. The commissioner wasn't against that. The owners wasn't against that. That basically the power stayed with LeBron James in the East after he failed with Miami. Basically, broke even 2-2 in the finals. Lost by a record margin 1 year. 1 year barely won on the last minute Ray Allen shot. Another year beat the Baby Thunder. Another year melted down to a plumber and his crew, Dirk Nowitzki. But now we're in Cleveland, and he takes the power out of the East again. And it shows me that the NBA hasn't wanted a soap opera based on-court greatness. And again, on-court greatness back in the day was not about one player taking the power out of the West or the East for his so-called greatness and running one side of the NBA so he can make it to the finals. On-court, as much as they want to call these teams super teams back in the day, my opinion and what I think a super team is when you're playing with other teams' number one franchise players, it is three guys. You wouldn't call Clyde Drexler and Hakeem a super team. Just like if LeBron James would have only went and played with Dwayne Wade, we wouldn't call that a super team. If LeBron James would have just went and played with Kyrie, we wouldn't call that a super team. If LeBron James only went and played his first season, well, not his first season, his second season in LA, which is Anthony Davis, that won't be considered a super team. Now, when we have Clyde Drexler and we have Hakeem and we have Barkley, that's a super team. But we saw what that super team got them. It was a super team that was old and broke up and out of their prime. It didn't get them one finals appearance. Now, if we're talking about LeBron James, if he would have went and played with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh in 2015, we would have called it a super team. But where would that have got him? It would have not got him nowhere because they're already older. They're beat up and broke down. So we would consider that a super team, but a super team out of their prime. For example, we're told about the big bad, big three that LeBron James had to go against in Boston. 2008. Yes, they won one championship, but they were together for like 5 or 6 years. Only won one championship. Only went to the finals the second time because LeBron James melted down and choked against that big, mighty Boston super team, who was a number 4 seed. That's how old and busted up and broke down they were. And if you put that same super team, that Boston super team, in the West, they never come out the West. And that's why they went to the East. So they weren't that mighty. And LeBron James had the number 1 seed over them 2 years in a row, 2009, 2010. So they weren't that mighty. In 2008, when they won the finals, not to make up excuses, but we know Biden got hurt that year. In 2008, LeBron James did take them to a game 7, turning the ball over at a high rate, shooting miserable from the field at the 3-point line, field goal percentage period, and shot horrible at the free throw line, and still took that same Boston team in 2007 to a game 7. No, 2008 to a game 7. So, not to mention, what was it, 2010, Orlando beat that mighty Boston super team. Just saying. So I'm just saying, they weren't that mighty. And we're showing you what happens when you put an old super team together. Either they barely do it and win a championship, or they stay together 5-6 years and they don't win a championship. Another example. When Shaq went to the Heat, Shaq passed his prime. Lonzo Mourning passed his prime. Gary Payton passed his prime. They were together like 3-4 years. Won one championship, only went to the finals one time. Just saying. LeBron James is not carrying or controlling the narrative of the NBA by himself. Clutch Sports is not controlling the narrative. They're bringing you entertainment. That's what the NBA is doing. And the owners and the commissioner is in on this. They could have moved past this guy a long time ago, but now this is their new soap opera, because these players in this era can bring you no on-court greatness in the 2020s. Where's your dynasty team? Where's your defense? Where's your rivalries? Where's your star players making defensive teams? LeBron ain't made a defensive team. Tatum ain't made a defensive team. Durant ain't made a defensive team. Joker ain't made a defensive team. Luka ain't made a defensive team. Most of your guys who was on that Olympic team, the 2024 Olympic team, well, your great players, never even been on one defensive team. Curry, no defensive teams. And if we track and we look, well, who was on these defensive teams that these guys couldn't even make a defensive second team? Booker ain't never made a defensive team. So you're trying to tell me all these great players basically don't play no defense? I'm being serious. There's elite defenders who make defensive first team, and then there's good defenders that make second defensive team. So you're trying to tell me all these great players in the 2020s that I just mentioned aren't even good defenders? And I'm not trying to say all of them had to make a defensive team, because, you know, we can say people like Charles Barkley never made a defensive team. Clyde Drexler never made a defensive team. But then again, we can look at and say, well, who was the guys that was stopping them from making a defensive team? And most of the time, these were all-time great defenders that stopped them from making a defensive team. Magic Johnson never made a defensive team, but can we look and see who were the guards that was stopping Magic Johnson, who had 2 steals titles, that stopped him from making a defensive team? And I bet the guys that stopped him from making a defensive team at that point guard position were all-time great defenders. So to me, like I said, when I hear these people on these podcasts and stuff like that, and they're talking about LeBron James controls this, LeBron James don't control nothing. He don't control nothing. His entire career from high school to his life story is all scripted. You can't really believe nothing that they've been trying to tell you because it's basically a narrative. If you go back and rewind to where he was taken in from a white family, a rich white family, went to a private school, well, at 8 years old, went to a private school from since he was 8 years old until he graduated. Don't that sound scripted? And they basically been with him ever since he got taken into this rich white family until this day. That's media scripting at its best, folks. So LeBron James has never controlled his own destiny off of on-court greatness that has made a soap opera in the NBA. It's been the media who has scripted this guy's career since he was little until now to be the face of the media, to have something to talk about. Because if any other great player fell this much, it would have been next, and next. They didn't play that stuff back in the day. Either it was on-court greatness, you eventually got the championship level, and now you're the face of the NBA, or you weren't good enough to be the face of the NBA, so we moved on to the next person who achieved that on-court greatness that can bring us that soap opera, and now you didn't do it, but now you're just one of the all-time greats. They didn't cheat for Charles Barkley. They didn't cheat for Clyde Drexler. They didn't cheat for Isaiah Thomas. They didn't cheat for Hakeem Olajuwon. They didn't cheat for Allen Iverson. They didn't allow these guys, they didn't cheat for Kobe Bryant. They didn't allow these guys to build super teams to have a story that they can bring you. They didn't cheat for Tim Duncan. They didn't cheat for Jason Kidd. So why did they cheat for this guy, LeBron James? Why did the NBA cheat for this guy? And they continue to cheat for this guy. And they have cheated the 2020 players out of their careers. The SGAs, the Jokers, even the Lucas. They continue to cheat these guys out of on-court greatness and out of their careers for a guy that just keeps losing and losing and losing and bringing you a soap opera with this guy. So when I hear people say, oh, LeBron James controls the narrative, no, he doesn't. The NBA does, which is in bed with ESPN, which is in bed with Fox. They're bringing you this because they're not holding the rest of this league to any standards. When you see these guys out here traveling, you see them out here carrying, you see them not playing on every level, whether it's in the paint, whether it's shooting from the mid-range, whether it's pick and roll to the basket, the three-pointer, rivalries, defense. They don't want you to see all this stuff. All they want you to see is LeBron James' storyline. So LeBron James' storyline has been pushed by the media, and the NBA has excused all this stuff that has been going on in the NBA, which is really not NBA anymore. They want you to look past these coaches aren't real coaches. Popovich having heart attacks because he's never coached a three-point contest. Popovich is about fundamentals. He's about screaming at players. He's about holding players accountable. He's about X's and O's. That's how he was show basketball. That's how he grew up on basketball. He watched the Phil Jacksons and the Red Auerbachs and the Bobby Knights and these guys like that. So he's having heart attacks because he's got to let these guys conform to what the NBA wants. And what the NBA wants, they don't want real head coaches. Because real head coaches ain't just going to let you shoot any shot anytime you want and not play no fun and not have no fundamentals. Don't play no defense. Don't execute. Don't listen to the head coach. Don't play on every level. And you see Doc Rivers, he's struggling with this NBA. Because this ain't the way he played basketball. This ain't the way he coached in the early 2000s. You think Phil Jackson could coach this trash? You think Bobby Knight could coach this trash? You think real NBA coaches could coach any of this trash that they're bringing you today? You think LeBron James is supposed to be this fundamentally sound, this genius, high IQ, traveling and carrying and stiff arming down the lane, not playing basketball on every level, picking his teams, not playing fundamental basketball? Just saying, these ain't real head coaches, and I done told you, it all couples with each other. These ain't real referees neither. And it's all to tell you these ain't real referees when they need instant replay. Mm-hmm. When you can watch your star player, literally, well, what they call star player, LeBron James, take you up and down the court, calling you nigga, calling you the B word, cussing you out, doing all this stuff to you as a referee. Huh? You better go ask Rasheed Wallace, who came from the 90s. This guy even smirked wrong, you're going to get a tech. Calling Michael Jordan for palms and carries and travels and all this stuff. They didn't play that back then. And like I said before, Michael Jordan, he didn't get mad. He just said, oh, that's crazy. And just walked him. Because even if he did it or not, that's the standard he wanted the referees to hold Patrick Ewing to. Hakeem Olajuwon, David Robinson, Charles Barkley, Bird, Magic Johnson, all these other guys. He didn't want to get away with traveling and carrying and doing all this stuff, because if he got away with it, now they're going to get away with it. If they got away with it, they can't hold him to the same standard too. But now LeBron James gets away with traveling and carrying and cussing out referees and building super teams. So now everybody gets to do it because he gets to cheat. And the reason why he gets to cheat is because the league, the owners, the commissioner lets him cheat. ESPN lets him cheat. Fox lets him cheat. Because they're taking the easy way out. They want one guy that they can have a storyline on and a soap opera on and shove it in your face. So when he loses, when he builds super teams, when he travels, when he blames, they're going to defend him for what? What is that called? What is that called when the people with common sense can see this ain't right? It's called trigger. So the media basically in the NBA is triggering their NBA fans to be pissed off, to be mad, to say this ain't right. So now they can get their ratings on social media. So now their league can get talked about on social media. So now they don't have to sell their league based on on-court greatness. Their players don't have to sell a soap opera based on on-court greatness. And again, what is on-court greatness? Defense, rivalries, competitiveness, playing at every level. Guys have positional. There's positional players, which means now you got to have a certain skill at every position. Guess what? The NBA don't want that. They don't care about that. They can sell their league based on trigger stuff. And what is trigger stuff to them? Again, it's about doing it wrong. And everything that's wrong about it, guess what? ESPN, Fox, they will act like ain't nothing wrong with it. It's all good. We'll support it. So again, that pisses off the YouTube community. It pisses off the sports community. And it gets their league talked about. They don't have to have real coaches no more. They don't have to have real referees no more. They don't have to have real fundamentals no more. They don't have to have real competitors no more. They don't have to have real rules anymore. Because they can sell their league off of trigger stuff. So that's all I'm saying about this, how LeBron James controls the narrative, how he controls the NBA. He don't control nothing. The media controls this. And guess what? The media and the NBA owners and the commissioner, they control all this stuff. Because back in the day, before LeBron James, guess who controlled the on-court greatness in the soap opera? The players. And they brought you the competitive nature. They brought you the defense. They brought you the rivalries. They did the rules right. They weren't building all these super teams in their prime. They didn't cuss out the referees. The referees wouldn't let, the players cuss them out or, haggle them up and down the court. The coaches were allowed to coach and be coaches. That's what sold the on-court greatness. So I'm not trying to say LeBron James took the on-court greatness out of the league. That's what some people want to think. It's the league, who is a company, which is a corporation, has all the say-so in it. They could have told this guy to kick rocks. You're not doing it this way. We're looking for the next guy who's doing it right, like Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, Bill Russell, Bird, Magic, all these other guys who did it the right way. But they're not looking for that. They haven't been looking for that since Kobe Bryant did it right. And to me, I don't think, they have those guys, to me, that can do a dynasty like that want to work hard and stuff like that, like I said, to bring them that type of stuff. The closest we had, the last we had really was Tim Duncan. And we can't really blame Steph Curry for doing what he had to do because the guy was going against a super team. Well, you just going to keep losing against a super team and then be, oh, that's okay. This retarded dude who can't do it right, like Steph Curry and Tim Duncan and Kobe Bryant and the rest of these guys, this retarded dude who can't do it right, everybody has to go against the super team. See, the people who went against the super team destroyed them. The Tim Duncans, the Dirk Nowinskis. Kobe Bryant was going to do it, but he was too coward. to do it that way. So they pretty much been, giving this dude all the leeway, giving this dude all the advantages to do it wrong, but everybody else has to sit there and suffer. You saw what they did with Luka Doncic, brought him over. This ain't got nothing to do with I'll forget his name, the general manager over there. This is a movie they're bringing you guys. This is to sell the Lakers in the future, bringing Luka Doncic over there, that not only to help LeBron James, but what I told you, because a lot of people are saying that silly stuff. Oh, if LeBron James leaves, they're going to take Bronny. Nope. They brought Bronny over to be the next clown, his father clown. So when LeBron James retires, Bronny is still going to be there. If he leaves this year, Bronny's still going to be there. He's going to be there with Luka for another soap opera that they're bringing you, because they don't want to bring you any on-court greatness to sell the league. Because on-court greatness, again, will require competitiveness, defense, going by the rules, rivalries, and guys playing on every level, and letting coaches be coaches. So you don't see that in the NBA, and it ain't fixing to happen anytime soon. So Bronny ain't going nowhere. It don't matter if LeBron retires, he's going to be the new clown. And like I said, you're going to hear just the most craziest stuff. Bronny led Luka to a win. He outscored Luka. He played more defense than Luka. If it wasn't for LeBron James bringing Bronny over here, where would Luka be? Yep. Luka already knows that. And as the game gets easier, into basically, I don't know what you want to call it, but Bronny is going to go to 15 points, then he's going to go to 25, and then he's going to go to 30, whatever. And that's going to be the soap opera. Bronny and Luka. You trying to doubt me? They already got this scripted, baby. Why do you think the Lakers brought him over there? To sell this soap opera. Because like I said, that's all you got now is a soap opera. And it's the soap opera with LeBron James, it ain't been based on court greatness. And Bronny's won't be based on court greatness either. So all these people talking about, oh, LeBron James this and LeBron controls this and LeBron. Nope. See, a lot of these people are pushing this narrative for the NBA. And that's why their channel gets a lot of views and a lot of this. And I was able to look back at, some of these people's channels, and I look at these subs on here. They're fake. They're all fake subs. All fake subs. These people who got channels, who have channels. If you go look on their channels, they're fake subs. They're fake people. They don't exist. And what do we call them? Bots. So again, these people out here pushing the NBA narrative instead of pushing reality. And I know it's hard to go against the NBA narrative, because everybody wants to make money, but that's just the truth. If you go with the NBA narrative on what it is, or what they've been trying to tell you, or sometimes you think they're not, because they're going against LeBron James, but that ain't the whole thing. This is what the NBA wants. They got nothing to do with LeBron James. LeBron James don't even control his own destiny. It's the NBA that controls his destiny. If the NBA wanted to out this dude a long time ago, that's what they would have went with. They would have went with Curry. Curry don't want none of this trash. Curry don't want to be the circus clown. LeBron James chose to be the circus clown a long time ago, and that's where the NBA put him, so they could have an easy script to piss people off. look at these sports analysts today. Could you imagine a Malika Andrews back in the day on ESPN talking basketball? What about Perk? Are you serious? What about Stephen A. Smith? Are you kidding me? All these McNamara. What about Shams Charania, whatever his name is? He's the insider of the NBA? Are you kidding me? All this is cheap welfare labor. They couldn't be back in the 90s, 80s, because this thing was sold on greatness. You only see these guys now on ESPN and Fox today because it's sold off a soap opera. There's no on-court greatness. It's all a script.